Getting your dog used to being in a crate is not a one-day fix. It is a process. And if you've ever tried it and felt like you failed, chances are you might have been skipping a step or maybe moving just a bit too fast. So today, we're going to walk through crate training from the first time your dog sees the crate to overnight success. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this. You've reached the Pet Parent Hotline, your lifeline to practical solutions for your toughest pet parenting challenges. I'm your host, Amy Castro, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise and turn expert advice into step-by-step strategies so you can stop chasing your tail and start enjoying life with pets again. Welcome back to Pet Parent Hotline. I'm Amy Castro, and when I first started crate training, I made one of the biggest rookie mistakes out there. I brought my puppy home, set up his brand new crate, popped him in there for the first time when we went to bed at night, and I thought we were going to be good to go. Well, let me tell you, he howled and cried most of the night. When I went to check on him at one point, there was pee and poop everywhere, and when I say everywhere, I don't mean contained to the crate. I mean on the floor, on the carpet, on the walls. It was a total disaster. And the truth is, all of that was my fault. I set him up to fail. I expected he was going to be okay going in that crate right away on his very first night home when he'd never even seen a crate before. Crate training isn't instant, and that's probably why so many people say that crates are bad and my dog had a terrible experience. It is a process. It takes patience and consistency and baby steps along the way. My guest today is Ruth Hegarty, a multi-certified trainer and behavior expert and the founder of Creature Good Dog Training. She helps families every day with the real-life challenges of training and behavior, especially with reactive dogs. She makes sure that pet parents have both the tools and the confidence they need to succeed. And Ruth's going to walk us through the process of crate training from the first time your dog sees the crate to overnight success. Well, Ruth, thank you for coming back again 2 weeks in a row to talk about crates. I'm all into the crates this month.
My pleasure, Amy. I'm all into the crate this month too because I have a puppy. So
that's right. Yeah. If anyone has not listened to our previous episode about picking the right crate, you get to hear about Ruth's new puppy and how much he's grown. And I'm sure he's continuing to grow.
I swear, every day I get up and he's bigger than he was when we went to bed.
That's crazy. So like I said, we talked about finding the right crate, and hopefully that gave people some good advice for getting at least a crate to start with and see how it works for your pet. But before we get into some of the specific steps, I mentioned my mistakes in bringing home a brand new puppy and putting him in the crate at night and thinking all was going to go well. Why is it a process and not just like something we can do in one day? Because I think people get discouraged when the first night goes really, really bad or the first day goes really bad.
Well, it's a process because dogs aren't born understanding what a crate is and how to use it, right? It's not instinctual. Just like humans aren't born knowing how to sleep by themselves. If you've ever had to get a baby to sleep alone, right, in their crib, or when they switch from a crib to a bed, it can really feel traumatic for them if it's rushed. So dogs are the same, whether they are actual babies or you get an adult dog. You want the process to be slow because it's inherently terrifying to be shoved into a box and have the door locked. No one wants that. Feels like you're getting kidnapped. So in order for that experience to be joyful for your dog, you have to make it a process.
Yeah. And I think my biggest mistake was just assuming, and I assumed because the puppy had come from an environment where he was confined, that confinement was confinement. And being in a pen with your mom and your siblings is not the same thing as being brought to some strange house that smells and looks different and thrown in a box.
It's the way dogs' minds work. They don't generalize things the way we do. So my bedroom at this house, and then I moved to this house. This is my bedroom. It's my bedroom. I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Dogs aren't like that because they come to a new location. Even if the actual crate is the same, you might want to do some remedial training because the neighborhood sounds are different. The smells are different. Maybe the times that you do things, when the sun hits the different windows, like those things matter to dogs and make something that seems the same to us not at all the same to them.
That's a good point. So the other thing that I wanted to kind of lay foundation for up front was the idea of being consistent, because I think half of the problems that people have, and it doesn't matter whether it's potty training, which obviously can be a challenge, or getting your dog used to going into the crate and staying in the crate. How important is it to be consistent in how you do that?
So, as trainers, we like to say consistency is everything. And it is and it isn't, right? So, you want to be consistent to make progress, but you don't want to beat yourself up if you skip a day. What you want to think closely about is building trust with your dog, not doing something as part of the training that's going to have them look at the crate with a cautious eye. You want to be consistently kind and consistently slow going, right? Consistently using treats, not necessarily consistently having your dog spend time every day in the crate. If you don't have time, you don't have time.
Right.
But it's better to skip a day when you don't have the time to go slow than to try to shorten it on that day just to say that you practiced, because that's where you run the risk of breaking trust, and that's going to really set you back.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things as somebody that runs a rescue that has always been a challenge, and you had mentioned this in the previous episode about how long you can leave a dog in a crate, but it's amazing to me the amount of people that will acquire a dog, whether it's a puppy or an adult, it does matter, but for my example, it doesn't matter. Acquire a dog on Saturday, spend all weekend with it, have it sleeping in their bed, and then on Monday, get up in the morning and put that dog in a crate and be gone for 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah, that's
hours.
tragic. It really is, because, and I'm not going to accuse anyone of deliberately being cruel, but you can be inadvertently cruel because you didn't do your homework. And it's going to affect your relationship with your dog, not just because you've left your dog for way, way too long in the crate, but because when you come home and let him out and he's been cooped up all day, now he's going to have crazy zoomies and he's going to be manic. But you just worked a 12-hour shift and you're tired. So you're like, this dog, man, he never stops. And that's going to make you feel some kind of way. And so there's the ripples of repercussions. When I got Archie August 1st, I took a lot of time off. I work for myself. I have that luxury. Not everyone does. But I would recommend, if you're getting a puppy, to take a week's vacation. Or even if you're getting an adult dog, you want to spend time with it. Line up a dog walker or the neighbor kid to babysit your dog. When I first would have, leave Archie alone for clients, I paid my nephews to watch him so he didn't have to be alone. So I didn't want to run the risk of him getting separation anxiety. And then I would slowly, leave him here and there. But just like buying a house, right? You do your research. What are the schools like? What are the neighborhoods like? What do the houses in the area sell for? Like, you Google it. You want to do the same when you're getting a dog, because there's a lot to it that even if you had dogs as a kid that your parents were taking care of, you don't see the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So it's, and I'm not judging anyone. I'm not criticizing anyone. But it's when you do things like that, thinking it's a good idea, you're not doing yourself any favors either, because you're going to struggle with your dog and your dog's going to struggle. So you're kind of hurting yourself as much as you're possibly impairing the dog's ability to have a nice day.
Yeah. I think it is important for people to hear that, because there's a right time and there's not a good time, for people to acquire a pet. And so doing this type of homework in advance and realizing, no, you can't leave your brand new dog for 10 hours a day and you don't have vacation time and you can't afford to have somebody come in and let the dog out. That probably is a pretty good sign that it's not the right time in your life to get a dog, no matter how much you want them and no matter how much you're probably going to love them, because just like you said, the dog's going to be miserable, you're going to be miserable, and then you're going to have really tough decisions to make and not just, I will wait on the dog, under the year or whatever it might be.
And it doesn't make you a bad person, right? Dogs today are different. I'm in my 50s. When I was a kid, neighborhood dogs wandered around. You knew who they were. You knew the ones not to go up to. You knew the ones you could pet and play with. But nowadays, because, people, also when I was a kid, nobody had a nut allergy, right? Now we have nut-free schools. People have changed. Dogs have changed. Having a dog, raising a dog is so much more like parenting today than it ever was. So you don't just get a dog and let him spend the day in the backyard, which was something you could do 30, 40, 50 years ago. Yeah. You can't do it now. So there's a lot more to dog ownership. And I think, if your experience of growing up with a dog, you just don't know, right? And it's hard when you don't know the things you should be asking about. Like you don't know what you don't know, so you can't even ask the right questions. But there are a lot of trainers and rescues and different resources if you're thinking about getting a dog that will help you. What's the right breed for me? What's the right size for me? What's the right time? What do I need to set up so that you don't run into that problem?
Right. I'm a huge believer in right fit, and there's a lot of factors to fit. And, we spend a lot of time, and then I'm going to get off this soapbox, but we spend a lot of time in rescue turning down people, and they get very offended. And it's like, it's not about you personally. It's about the fit. It's about your scenario. It's about where you are in life. And it's, we want what's best for the animal.
Yeah. Because a lot of dogs come back the next day,
Yes,
if
they
not
do.
the next week.
Yes,
And
they do.
because they were too much this or too little that. And, not everyone spends the kind of time people like you and I do that are in this industry studying dog behavior and dog genetics and dog whatever. So it's not their fault they don't know, which is why they should avail themselves of the services, and the help.
So let's start this process. So
Okay.
I'm bringing home a new dog. I've always been of the philosophy, like, just like you would have the baby's crib ready, you're going to have the crate up and ready to go.
Yep.
And that way, when the dog is being introduced to the house, it's already part of the house. They sniff it. They know that it's there, whatever it is. So take us from that point. And we've already talked about what kind of crate and all of that. So we've got the right crate in theory, and we've got it set up. And let's start with location. Is there a good starting point for that? Like, is it better to have them in the bedroom versus the living room where everybody's going to be? Or
so you want to have your crate in a spot where the dog can feel like they're part of the family, but not be in such a high traffic area that it's stressful for them.
Okay.
So if they're in the bedroom in the crate by themselves and everyone else is in the living room and they can hear you talking and having a good time, they're going to feel sad, especially if they're young. Because a puppy wants to be with you because they just left their mommy and it's a very big deal, like your first semester away at college, 7 states over. So you can move the crate around or you can choose a spot that's sort of intermittent, maybe the kitchen, right? Because everybody goes in the kitchen at some point, but it's not necessarily the hallway that everyone's running back and forth.
Right. Okay. And then we've got it set up in a good location. And then how do we get the dog to see? So we don't throw them in there overnight and hope that's going to go well.
Right. So you make the crate awesome. Some toys in there for him, treats, high value treats in there, and you hang out over by it. Maybe play with your puppy, let him explore in there, show him, like toss a treat in. He's like, oh, let me go in there and sniff around and eat that treat. A good way to make the crate have value to the dog is to give them their meals in it. When you haven't closed the door yet, you want the dog to be able to feel good about the crate. He can come and go as he wants, or she. Periodically, you toss treats in it so they wander over. Treats are in my crate. This is awesome. I think I'll lay down here and eat my snack. You work on that for a while. Now, I don't want to give times necessarily because every dog's going to be different. So I don't want to say you do that for 48 hours and then you can, but you can gauge it. And then you're going to maybe give the dog a little snack or a chew, maybe something that lasts a little bit longer. Put it in the crate, give it to him, and then you close the door while he's having it. But you hang around. You open the door. So you're not going to close the door. You're not going to leave. It's not going to be an hour. It's going to be a minute, 5 minutes, right? Depending, just while he's having his thing. And you build up the time. You also build up your ability to leave. So once he gets used to the door being closed for, let's say, 5 minutes, you put him in there with a treat, close the door, maybe say, oh, I'll be right back. Run to the kitchen or whatever, however you talk to your dog. I constantly say, I'll be right back to my dog. No matter what I'm doing. So you don't have to say it like that. Go to the kitchen, walk right back. Hey, your treat looking good, blah, blah, blah.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you make a big deal out of things? Like, especially like when you come back, I'm like, oh yeah, good puppy.
The real answer is no, you're not supposed to make a big deal. You're supposed to be low key about it.
Okay.
I am a person who cannot be low key about it. When I come home after leaving my dog alone and he's jumping up and down, I'm jumping up and down. Now, I know there is a school of thought that says you come and go as if it's no big deal. That's just not who I am as a person. But yes, there is value there, depending on the dog. There is value in that. I want my dog to jump all over me when I come home and I sit down on the floor and we wrestle for a minute. That's just me.
Yeah. See, I'm exactly the opposite.
Right.
I want to come home. I need a minute, especially if I've worked and I'm wearing dress clothes because I went and had a speaking engagement, I don't want slobber face rubbing on my pants and jumping and scratching and bruising me. Like, I'm not ready for that yet. So I think that's a good point. You're creating the energy that you're now going to have to live with.
So there's value in either way. I'm conscious of the fact that, yes, this is not something I'd recommend to clients to do it this way. I do it. I choose to do it. I do not mind. I've always done it. But yes, being low key so that the dog doesn't perceive you coming and going, leaving the house and entering the house as a big deal. There's tremendous value in that. Yeah. And depending on who you are and who your dog is and, how you like to transition, you're going to go one way or the other. I sometimes call certain things that aren't, your dog needs to know recall. That's a safety issue. That's a training. That's a training rule. But then there's parenting. There's parenting decisions you make as a dog parent. And that's how you're going to greet your dog when you come in. Right. Mm-hmm. So what you don't want to do is act traumatized, right? Like if you're leaving your dog or you're walking away from the crate and say, oh, honey, I'm so sorry, but I have to go to work. Somebody has to pay the bills. Like you don't want to do that because your dog can read your energy and they'll be like, oh no, something bad's happening. So you don't do that. But you can kind of pick and choose based on your personality and your dog's personality and come and go. Something you want to be mindful of with the crate is if you're practicing and you leave the room and you come back in and your dog is whining or barking because they want to get out, you don't want to let them right out because that's teaching them that barking or whining is how I asked to be removed from the crate. Mom understands that because she opened the door. So you want to wait for them to stop, even just for a couple of seconds, and then you let them out when they're being quiet. If you're concerned, if you can't stand the thought of your dog crying and that's upsetting to you, you can help them to stop by showing them a treat or something to get them to stop and then let them out.
Yeah. So that you don't want to reward the negative behavior that then they're going to now make normal.
Because they will logically assume that if they want to get out, they should cry. Right. Because then that's how mom knows I want to get out. Yeah. So you just don't want to accidentally teach them that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was wondering about because I've done this multiple times with various types of dogs. You gave the example of when you first start closing the door. There are some that the first time you close the door, you haven't even gotten up off the floor and they're digging and clawing and flipping out. And others of them, you can go to the kitchen right away for 2-3 minutes.
Right.
Come back and they're blasé, like they've been in their whole lives. And so the progression, I would assume, should be in proportion to your dog's response to each stage.
Yeah. Try to read their energy. If your dog approaches the crate for the very first time and they're trying to get the treat out of it, but they refuse to put their back feet in.
Yeah.
They're a cautious dog and they're going to take more time before you're even going to get to close the door for a second. If they run right in and roll around and eat the treat, then okay, they're more confident and you're probably going to be able to move a little bit faster. But you want to read the room, so to speak. And if you make a mistake, we often I've made mistakes with my dogs because I'm a person. Doctors make mistakes. All experts make mistakes from time to time, right? So if you do make a mistake, take a break, think about what you did, not in a go stand in the corner, think about what you did sort of way.
But just, what you did.
Right. Not like that, but just like, okay, I rushed it. Why? Well, I was anxious. Just kind of, if you're a journaler, journal it, process it and say, okay, we're going to take a step back, just do a little bit of remedial, leave the door open for a day and just throw extra good treats in there and just be like, okay, reset. Because you're going to get frustrated with your dog, especially when you're training. Dogs can be frustrating. They have the minds of 2-year-olds. 2-year-olds can be frustrating. So you're going to have moments where you're like, this dog's never going to learn or whatever. Oh, he pooped in the house again, whatever it is. So just give yourself a moment, step back, do something fun with your dog, maybe play a game with them, just kind of reset yourselves, just like any relationship. It's going to have its moments and then go back to it. It's just the road to success is not a straight road. You're going to have some kinks and curves, but you'll get there.
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned that journaling. That's probably not a bad idea, is to keep track of what you've done. Yesterday, we tried this twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and we went to 3 minutes, and then we went to 5 minutes. I'm wondering about the jump from I'm closing you in for 5 minutes and letting you out to I'm going to work for 3 hours kind of thing until the dog walker gets here. There's progression in between that. So that's why I think it's important. You mentioned that taking a week off or having somebody else that's available, like a dog walker or
Mm-hmm.
a neighborhood retiree. I'll come do it. I'll come hang out with your dog.
Right.
Not that I'm really retired, but or not.
Right. And, I'm a huge fan of journaling and using it as a way to track progress with your dog. Even if you just, if you're an Excel guy, make a spreadsheet or journal. There are lots of, if you go online and Google, lots of sort of puppy prep things that you can get and puppy logs. So you can log that. But there's even this cute, I almost bought it and then I didn't. It's like like baby's first year. They make them for puppies. So I was, because I'm like, oh, his first pup cup. I got to take a picture of that. Oh, his first. But, it's because of negativity bias, right? And not to get into too much brain science, but it's so much easier for us to remember the setbacks that we had instead of the progress. So if you're having a hard day and you go and you look and you're like, oh, well, it only took me 2 weeks to get to X minutes. So we're really doing good. I've only had this puppy for X amount of time. So it makes sense that we're only here. We're actually doing really well if we look at it on paper.
Right.
Instead of, especially when you're in a moment when things aren't going well, it's easy to catastrophize. This puppy's never going to learn it, blah, 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 blah. And we're human. That's how our brains are designed. So that's what's going to happen because we can't organically be something that we aren't. Yeah. So it's really helpful. I'm a huge fan of tracking things like that. And you can do it. You don't have to be elaborate. You can do it in a little notebook. You can, make a checkoff sheet, or you can just jot down a couple of sentences at the end of your training session with your dog or the end of the day. It's really helpful.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the role of cameras and things like that. Like if you had some type of pet cameras or nanny cams or whatever, that you could go to the kitchen and watching on the camera, and I see that the puppy was laying down, chewing its toy, whatever, and now he's up and now he's looking at the door. It's like, now might be the time for me
to walk back in. Yeah.
Instead of waiting for the whine or the digging. So, use technology to your advantage.
I have a Furbo that I can watch Archie on when I'm not here. I mean, cameras nowadays you can get so inexpensively. Yeah. And Furbo often will have sales, and you can also sort of MacGyver something where if, there's a couple of you in the household and you got 2 iPhones, FaceTime, set one up by the crate and take the other one into the kitchen so that you can watch the dog. Like there's different things that you can do without having to buy something new. But yeah, that can be helpful to be able to see your dog.
Yeah. And you had mentioned as far as treats and things like that, one of the things that I used to do I think it was more out of guilt. It wasn't like the dog had an issue with being in his crate, but we used to have a freezer basket full of Kongs that had frozen this and that, pumpkin. Sometimes it was pumpkin, sometimes it was canned dog food. And it's just something to keep them busy while they're closed up in a crate for a couple.
Right.
It's not going to last 3 hours, but is that a good idea to put something like that in there to distract them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's an activity, any activity that your dog is sniffing, licking, or chewing. Those are naturally relaxing dog behaviors. So a Kong that you froze with peanut butter or yogurt or whatever, put it in there. They maybe take some 20, 30 minutes, depending on your dog. Then they're going to take a nap, right? Dogs sleep upwards of 17 hours a day, even adult dogs. So they've got a full belly. It's nice and cozy in their crate, probably going to take a nap for a while. They can tell the difference between half an hour and all day, but they're not going to tell the difference necessarily between 90 minutes and 2.5 hours, right? One of the ways they tell time is scent. How long does it take for your scent to dissipate after you've left the house? The stronger your scent, the safer they feel. So one of the reasons why you don't want to leave them for too long. Another way they tell time is what's going on in the neighborhood. Does the 83 bus go by your street at X time? So, that's how they know that, oh, mommy always comes home right after I hear this noise, whether it's the neighbor coming home or church bell or something like that. So they're not going to be clock watching, but they do have some idea of how much time has passed. Scent being a really key one, because if you're going to be gone for a little bit longer, say the outside, the 4 hours, and usually gone only 2 hours, maybe take your PJ t-shirt that you slept in and put it in the crate with your dog, or the towel that you used or something, so that they have your scent with them longer. That will help them to feel safe longer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking about something else. About does it help to have music playing, or like I've got a blind cat out in my dog building right now, and I was thinking because she's still kind of being isolated because we don't know exactly what's wrong with her. But there's not a lot of stimulation, and she's not used to being blind. Like I've got another blind cat who finds all kinds of things to do with herself, and so I actually just ordered a radio so that she could at least have some low voices in the background, so it's not so startling when we go out, or that she gets more used to the sound of the human voice. Does it help?
Yeah, it does, because it can just be white noise from a fan because it will drown out, maybe kids playing next door. But there's Wagnific, which is specific music for dogs.
Mm-hmm.
There is dog TV. Dogs now can also watch regular TV now that we have the ultra high def. They can see the TV better, and they can also just be listening to it. Music, studies have shown dogs like reggae music, dogs like soft rock music. I'd have to look up the study for some of the others. They do not care for rap music, which I listen to a lot. So I'm like, sorry, dog. So there's a lot of things, and the sounds themselves can be soothing, or it can just be sounds that drown out other things. What I do for my dogs are put on certain shows like Midsummer Murders, which is a British television show that I watch all the time, like in the background. So I'll leave that on for the dog because it sounds that he's used to hearing. And, you can get marathons of certain popular shows. So he's used to those voices. And there's not going to be sirens. There's not going to be screaming that's potentially going to upset him. So you could target something the dog is familiar with because you watch it all the time, or something designed for a dog, or just, like the garden show where it's just a bunch of people talking.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because my dog Jack, he used to get scared when we would watch something scary. And sometimes it wasn't even something like scary, like monster scary or scary, but like a murder thing. And so part of it, I feel like he was reacting to as strange as it sounds, to the music on the TV.
Yeah.
But then I would bet too that he was probably also feeding off of like that anticipatory, like I'm waiting for the murderer to come out with the knife. And so everybody in the room's all tense, or people yell every once in a while.
Your dog, part of it is that if you're watching something and a jump scare gets you and you're like, your dog's good. What? But yeah, the music, or just dogs are very good at reading the room, reading your emotions, reading your facial expressions. And so if, and as humans, we can watch a scary movie and feel those emotions, even though we know we're home. So yeah, my dog Jake, I couldn't watch anything that had sirens or crying babies. He didn't like sirens, and he was very upset when babies cried. He felt, where's this baby? I have to do something about this. So some of it depends on your dog's personality.
Yeah. So how do I know? I was just thinking about the idea of progressing from, we've done these exercises in smaller bits of time.
Mm-hmm.
We've built up to whatever the trip to the grocery store or what. But how do we know when it's safe to leave the house and actually just leave them unattended?
Unattended in their crate, or not in their crate? So if you worked up to a grocery store run, I would say that's probably a good sign that you can go to a movie too, because, that's an hour.
Yeah.
So if you can do an hour, you can probably do 2 hours. And if you do have a Furbo or something like that, you can be watching your dog. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Furbo, but there's an app that goes with it, and it will give you an alert if your dog barks, or it, will let you know your dog is quietly sleeping, or if their dog is moving around and seems agitated, so that if you wanted to experiment, you're like, all right, I'm going to go and stay out for 3 hours, and I'm just going to go whatever.
Going out in your own yard as long as they can't see and hear you.
Right. So then, and if you have something where you could keep your eyes on them, then if they do become agitated, you could go back early.
We'll be right back.
Can we be real for a second? Vet bills can be brutal. One unexpected visit, and suddenly you're choosing between paying your rent or paying for your pet's care. That's exactly why I created the Vet Bill Survival Kit. It's free, and inside you'll find 10 proven ways to save money at the vet without shortchanging your pet. Download your kit today at petparenthotline.com/vetkit. That's petparenthotline.com/vetkit. Yeah. Now, don't some of those cameras have the ability to talk to the dog? And is that a good idea while
the
they're
Furbo? I guess it depends on the dog. I've known dogs that were soothed by the sound of your voice. If you're like, hey, it's mommy, everything's okay. And then other dogs that were like, where is she coming from? And they'd get upset about it. So you can experiment and try. The Furbo that I have, I think they have a couple of different models, but you can also press a button on the app and it will shoot treats out.
Nice.
So now you wouldn't have a crated dog for that. If your dog was out in the open, you could do, I suppose, if you were good at maneuvering it. So it went in,
right?
Yeah. So that's another feature of it if your dog wasn't in a crate.
Yeah. And would all that process be the same, like if you weren't somebody that wants your dog sleeping in bed and because for years, and still in some instances, some of the dogs, like one in particular, I've got an older Chihuahua and she pretty much sleeps in the crate because she won't pee in her crate. But if I leave her loose, she will go pee in the dining room or, you'll find pee.
Because she has enough space. Yeah. Right. Space issue.
So is there anything different in if you're using the crate for overnight versus being gone? The process is still the same, right? Except I just didn't know if it made a difference because you're still in the house and they know it.
So you would get them used to it. You'd have a wind down, their evening routine, and then they'd go in. They're diurnal like us, so they're going to sleep through the night. And so long as they've done their final potty break and they're not, too full of energy, they're going to go to sleep. And if they've been sleeping in the crate from day one, it's going to be easier than if you've just decided that you don't want them in the bed anymore. That's going to take some time. It might be easier if you put the crate in the bedroom in that instance, because they're going to do better knowing that you're right there and sleeping. They might, try to finesse you in the beginning, like, I'll fit in that bed, but they'll feel more comfortable with you nearby. But if you don't want that, you can still make it work with them being outside of the bedroom.
Yeah, I think it depends because one of our dogs started out, I remember it distinctly, being on my husband's side of the bed. I didn't want to give in and have her in the bed because that wasn't a habit I wanted to start, but having her crate next to the bed and he just kind of slept with his hand on top of, where his fingers were sticking in. So and then progressing from, not touching the crate but then for however many years later, and she really was to the point where she didn't need to be, she wasn't somebody that got into mischief.
Yeah.
But I mean, the crate just kind of stayed in the bedroom and that was where her bed was. But then since then, they've all been out in the living room, dining room. So I think it's it just came down to comfort zone and convenience for us.
Well, and if you have more than one dog, it's probably easier to have them. If it's just one dog, they're going to be alone if they're not in the bedroom with you. But if you have a couple of dogs, then they're sleeping in their little group.
Yeah.
I've always wanted my dogs to sleep in my bed. So I've never crated a dog overnight. That's a personal choice.
All right. So just to pull all this together. So we're going to get the crate. We're going to get it set up in advance. We're going to treat it as part of the furniture. They go in and out. We're going to make it lovely where there's food and toys and treats. We're going to gradually try shutting the door for a minute and kind of progress in time from there. Talked about putting frozen Kongs and other things to keep them occupied. I would just suggest nobody put anything in there that the dog could eat down and then choke.
A choking hazard.
Which you wouldn't want at home anyway. Any other last tricks, tips, bits of advice?
Go slow. The most common mistake people make is to try to rush the process. Don't set a deadline. Don't be like, well, Auntie is going to stay here for a month at this date, so it has to be done by this. You can't do that. It's going to take how long it's going to take. And if it interferes with Auntie's visit, then you set up other environmental factors, right? It doesn't have to be a crate. It could be a gate into a particular room. So there's solutions to every problem, but you don't want to rush the process because when you start, you're going from neutral to I love my crate. But if you've accidentally gone, I'm terrified of the crate, now you have to work your way back to neutral and then up to I like my crate. So it's really beneficial to not just your dog, but you to really take your time with it.
Always make it something positive. And actually, that's another one last point, too, is to not use the crate as a punishment.
No, but yeah, like I can't take this anymore. You're going in your crate. Now, you can take a break from your dog so long as you don't make it a punishment. So if you do need a break, your puppy is very mouthy and you're bleeding, just say, boy, let's have a Chewy in our crate. What a lucky pupper, right? It's not a punishment. You're entitled to take a moment, right? You can also remove yourself, just go to the bathroom for 5 minutes. But so you can use the crate to give yourself a moment so long as you don't approach it like it's a punishment. I also think whether you've gotten an adult dog or a puppy, you want to get them into a routine. And I'm a big fan of sort of nap time or quiet time, like you would with a small child. Maybe you take your walk, you have your breakfast, you do whatever. And now it's quiet time. You go in your crate for an hour while I do my paperwork or, do whatever I need to do some housework, work on my computer, that kind of stuff.
That's such a good point, too, because a lot of the concerns that I've seen people express from when they're working from home.
Right.
My dog's a Velcro dog. You won't leave me alone. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it's like, well, if you had the crate and you got them used to
You make it a habit.
Yeah, you don't have to be with me 24/7. I mean, I've got my door shut here. There's nobody whining at the door.
Yep.
Even though as soon as I open it, somebody will come flying from somewhere, right? But they know not to do that because we shut the door when we do podcast recordings.
Dogs love structure and routine. It helps them tell time. It helps them feel safe. And you can sleep in on a Saturday and a Sunday, and it's not going to ruin your dog's routine, right? It's more about sequence of events. Walk first, then breakfast, or breakfast first, then walk. Those are the kind of things that matter to a dog, whether it's at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock. But if you get them into a routine of being in the crate at certain times, especially if your important work meetings, if you work from home, are at certain times, then those might be great quiet times for your dog. Yeah. So you can, kind of work with both of your schedules to make things positive for both of you.
Yeah, that's a good point. You had mentioned the idea of getting them their exercise and tiring them out. I would think that would probably help with a lot of the crate training. If they're not hungry, they've had plenty of exercise, now they're ready to chill.
They don't have to go to the bathroom.
That's the time to work on the crate training because they'll be more inclined to want to lay down in their bed with that chewy than, when they're all hyped up.
Right. When they already took a nap for an hour on the couch and now you decided that you're going to crate train them.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
So timing is important. All right. So if you're ready to set your dog up for crate training success, make sure you check out our show notes for additional information. And we'll also have a link to Ruth's website so you can reach out and connect with her. And Ruth, thank you so much once again for being here to help us talk about training our dogs successfully. What I like about you especially is that you don't make anybody feel bad about doing things like letting a dog sleep in your bed. It's like, oh, I break that rule. I let my dog jump up on me. It really does come down to how you want to live your lifestyle. But I think with the crate training, just being able to get your dog used to being in the crate when you need them to be in there is just such a great skill to have.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, happy to. And, I'm a firm believer that shaming people doesn't move people forward. So if people get to do what they want to do, so long as it's not harmful. And there are as many different ways to raise your dog appropriately as there are to raise your child appropriately.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So everybody out there, if you're listening to this, if your dog's doing great without a crate, great. You don't have to start crate training, but you might have that next dog that comes along where it could be, or your lifestyle changes in some way where having your dog be happy and excited to go get in their own crate when you need them to can be a really beneficial thing to have in your life for a variety of reasons. So hopefully these steps give you an idea of how the process works. Again, it's not on a tight timeline. It's not on any kind of a specific timeline. It's all going to be very specific to your own dog. So take your time, follow the steps, and you should be able to get to the point where you are having crate training success. And thank you again for listening to another episode. We will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Pet Parent Hotline. If you enjoyed the show, don't keep it to yourself. Text a friend right now with a link and tell them I've got a show that you need to hear, and ask them to let you know what they think. And remember, your pet's best life starts with you living yours. So be sure to take good care of yourself this week and your pets.